Book 4, Falcon in the Barn, Chapter 29. They're back! The expedition! Something Jatsi had to learn during the past raining season was a new sense of balance. In walking, in sleeping, and in negotiating the ladders in the barns. And now that it was the second day of planting season in the new year 338, she was determined to master the skill of getting down and up again out of the dirt. Her expanding belly always led the way, often into ways she didn't want to go. Although her mother insisted, along with the new midwife from Orchards, that she was not large for an expecting woman, Jatsi felt positively enormous. Her brother, gasping dramatically at her profile and holding his mouth in mock horror whenever he saw her, did not help. And when her father told her, thinking that he was helpful, to wait another 2 moons to see just how large she could get before she birthed the baby, she was nearly in tears. Only Dec, when he kissed her belly and sighed in pleasure, could convince her it really was beautiful. Her greatest amusement, though, was Shem. The baby always seemed to be the most active when he visited, and whenever Jatsi put his hand on her belly to feel it kicking and rolling, great uncle-to-be Shem always teared up. Perrin had given him a new name, Crybaby. Shem deserved it for calling him Grampy. When planting season arrived, Jatsi was determined to get in as much of this year's crop as she could before the baby came. She knew she'd be of little use from the middle to the end of the season, except to sit under a tree nursing the newborn and cheering on her husband. Although Dec told her not to worry, Perrin had already soldiers lined up to help, Jatsi still felt a duty to their farm. That's why her mother found her one morning in the middle of the field crawling along the cold, damp dirt and dropping peas. "Jatsi, you'll ruin your back that way," her mother called as she trotted up the row. "Let me do that for you." Jatsi shook her head. "No, Mother. If you plant these seeds upside down, we'll only have roots coming up, and we'll have to dig in the ground to extract the peas." Mari narrowed her eyes at Jatsi. "You said that was true only of the bulbs." "There's so much you just don't know, Mother," Jatsi said with feigned sadness. "For someone supposedly so smart." Mari smiled. "Not about everything, I know. But I do know this. If you hurt your back now, birthing will be that much harder." "I feel wonderful, Mother," she said, continuing to drop the shriveled peas. "I wouldn't do this if I didn't. It makes me feel better anyway, contributing to the farm." "Oh, you contribute plenty. You'll be contributing a new farmhand soon. Come now, teach me what to do." Mari kneeled down in the row next to her. "I've got this week off of school, so I best start being useful." "You seriously want to do this, Mother? Get dirt on your hands?" "Of course," Mari said cheerily, but Jatsi recognized the dinner smile. "How about you go gather the eggs instead? That's harder for me to do, bending down and rooting through the straw." "Are you sure? I really want to help you." "Then gather the eggs. The fort cook will be down for them by midday meal, and Dec's busy checking on the cows. Looks like a few of them will be birthing at the same time I am." Mari chuckled. Poor Deckett. Life's just bursting out all around him, isn't it? Jatsi pushed up onto her knees. "Remember how almost 2 years ago I complained about how many people had died around us? And now, well," her voice wavered. She'd gone all raining season without crying, but now that she was getting closer to the baby coming, the tears were closer as well. Her mother smiled sympathetically. "I know exactly what you mean. When the Briders passed away, I never would have imagined that almost 2 years later, you'd be planting their fields while carrying their grandchild." "All right, now stop," Jatsi said, wiping away a tear and laughing. "I'm a bit over-emotional as it is. I don't need you adding to it. Get the eggs." "Your farm. You're in charge." Mari got to her feet, looking relieved. A movement down the field caught her eye. "Perrin?" Jatesy turned as well. Her father was running toward them awkwardly, trying to keep within the long rows. "Perrin, what's wrong?" Mari called to him. "They're back. The expedition." He panted and stopped in front of them. "And?" Mari nearly screamed. "I don't know. They were sighted south of Moorland on a fast pace to Idumea. Some of the soldiers I sent to check on the ruins saw them passing." Mari stomped her foot. "They didn't find out anything from them?" Perrin smiled. "That's exactly what I yelled at them. Apparently they have news about Terrap's land, and they're in a hurry to deliver it." "So what might that mean?" Jatesy asked, struggling to get up. Her father scooped her up and placed her on her feet. "Still not as heavy as your mother was. You have time," he assured her. "What does it mean? I really don't know. I have half a mind to catch up to them to find out." "So go," Mari said. "Saddle up and catch up to them." Perrin shook his head. "They're miles away by now. Even with Clark, the only way I could catch him would be to get horses from the messenger stations. And I have a feeling those poor men have very long memories." Mari squirmed. "Then I'll go. I'm light enough." Her daughter and husband burst out laughing. "Fine, fine," Mari sighed, trying to hide her smile. "We'll send Pato." Perrin pushed a stray lock of hair off her face. "Mari, we just have to be patient. I'm sure there'll be news soon. The only reason I can imagine for them moving in such a hurry is to deliver their news to the administrators quickly. If it were bad news, they'd be taking their time, right?" "You may have a point. I bet that's the real reason the dinner was postponed. Not because Cush is still ill, but because they want to turn the dinner into some grand celebration about what they found in Terrap's land." "Give them 3 or 4 days. Then we'll know something, I'm sure." 3 or 4 days? Perrin, I don't know if I can handle waiting that long." "You've waited nearly a year. You can wait some more." Knock, 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 knock. The knocking was even in his dreams, the ones he still had occasionally. He knew he'd never be fully rid of the images, but at least now he could control them, even continue sleeping through them once he ordered them away. Always the same thing happened. The Garters returned, streaming toward his house in massive numbers. But they always stopped and knocked on the door. 5 times. Thorne's knock. Perrin rubbed his eyes and looked up as if he could see through the ceiling and to the seat of the Creator. "How much longer do I get the privilege of being his commander?" he whispered to the cosmos. "Just so I know. I'm not complaining. I'm just curious." When no answer came, Perrin sighed and said, "Come in." "Just wondering if you heard the news, Colonel." Thorne swung open the door. "That the expedition was sighted?" "I heard, Captain. And how's your grandfather?" Thorne shrugged. "You know as much as I do, sir. Still ailing. That's why they postponed the dinner." Perrin nodded once. "Anything else, Thorne?" "Did you look over my proposal for the new training regime? I really don't see any need to continue Zenus's late-night forest tours, since the Garters are obviously gone." Perrin sat back and folded his hands in his lap. "As much as I want to believe that, I've realized I can't. Because how many times over the past 137 years have the Garters been gone?" Thorne furrowed his eyebrows. "Sir?" "How many times, Captain? How often did we think they had retreated to wherever they live, or quit their attacks, only to show up again one day raiding an unsuspecting village?" Thorne pursed his lips. "Many times, I suppose." 19, Perrin said. "I counted once. If they did it 19 times, they'll likely do it 20. I won't be the village that's unsuspecting. We will continue Zenus's training, which has been the best the world has ever seen, And if I choose to implement changes, I'll be sure to let Zenas and you know about it." Uncharacteristically, Thorne took a step closer to the desk. "Sir, I think you're making a mistake. Perhaps your judgment has been hampered by influences in your past. And if you'd only listen—" Perrin was holding up his hand, and Thorne was staring at it, finding himself suddenly tongue-tied. "Let me get this straight," he said coldly. "I've been hampered by influences in my past. My judgment is impaired?" Thorne didn't shrink back or even look apologetic. "One of my many duties as your second in command is to tell you what you may not want to hear." "Since when?" "Since always, Colonel," Thorne snapped. "Some commanders refer to their second in command as their second minds. And I'm advising you now, as I'm supposed to, that you're clinging to the old ways because you're comfortable with them. But the world is changing, Colonel, and we must change with it or be devoured by it. I agree that the Garters may return, but they'll find a new way to make their presence known. We must be prepared for different contingencies." That Perrin controlled his fury for so long truly impressed him. He wished Mari had been there to see this. "Thorne, I read your proposal," he said between gritted teeth, "and I agree with you that when the Garters return, it'll likely be in a way none of us expect. However, your suggestion to train soldiers in confronting citizens, patting them down for weapons, and escorting them back to their homes for additional inspections makes you sound more paranoid than I was at my very worst." "Paranoid?" hissed Thorne. He was exceptionally brave today. Perrin was beginning to be impressed and astonished. He really hated that. "Sir, paranoia is what makes a great leader," Thorne declared, leaning on his desk. "Never fully trusting your subordinates, never fully believing your enlisted men, and never fully having faith in those who claim to love you. One of the many things I've learned from you is that a little bit of cynicism is most healthy for the life of a commander, Colonel." "Well then," Perrin said, with his own piercing glare, "you seem to have become very healthy in the past few seasons, haven't you? I can't but help wonder why." "I'm simply maturing, sir," Thorne said, standing up and straightening his jacket. Perrin wondered if the captain had blinked at all in the past 5 minutes. "The longer I serve, the more I see, and the more I recognize how blinded people can be. It's my duty to remove those dark coverings that keep men like you from seeing the truth." "And what makes you so sure you know the truth, Captain?" Perrin challenged. "I know how to see, sir. I have no claims of affection or emotion that cloud my perceptions of the truth." "Fascinating," Perrin said. "Several times you've mentioned love, affection, and the like, as if those are bad things. As if you believe they—" "Destroy one's ability to see the truth? Yes," Thorne insisted. My, said Perrin, slightly amused. "Not only have you become healthier, you've become more obnoxious." Thorne stood taller. "Some day you'll understand, sir. You'll see that I'm doing this for you. You will be impressed and astonished. And then you'll wonder what to do next. When that day comes, realize that I am here to guide you. I am here for you, Colonel Shin." He nodded once and left the office. Perrin let out a low whistle once he was sure the captain wasn't at the door listening. "Here for me? My, Captain Thorne. Sounds like you have plans." He looked up at the ceiling again. "So I ask again, how much longer?" Thorne cracked his neck as he strode to the stables. Soldiers parted for him to pass, as they always did, the sure sign of respect and fear. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the parchment message, wrapped several times and sealed with the largest amount of wax he dared apply. He stopped in front of the messenger's horse just as the corporal was about to mount it. "One more for the pack, Corporal," Thorne said crisply as he handed it to the soldier. The young man glanced at the addressee name on the outside before he placed it in the pack. "No one asked you to read the name, soldier," Thorne snapped. "You get that pack to Idemia as swiftly as you always do, and let nothing detain you. Understood?" The corporal saluted. "I've never let you down, sir. All of your messages reach Idemia, sir. All of them." Thorne stepped back to let the messenger begin his long ride 80 miles to the south. He folded his arms and scowled. There had never been a message sent to the administrative headquarters quite like this one. Leonard had been most fruitful the past 2 seasons, even bringing Thorne notes about what his teacher said. Together they'd roll their eyes at her assertions, then Thorne would take the notes and gingerly pocket them. Many copies had been sent in the past 3 seasons, with messages of praise coming back from Idemia. And now the file was thick, bulging even. Genevieve had requested one more update, and Thorne watched it right away. The final report of so many discussions and thinly veiled debates that she allowed her students to carry out. Bits here and there that, like snowflakes, individually would have been nothing. But all of it packed together created one massive, icy snowball, dangerous and painful. Now it was up to Administrator Genevieve to hurl it. Pato jogged over to Rector Young's house after helping Decca move hay for the cows, and found the old man outside inspecting his herbs. He smiled when he saw Pato. "Did you hear the news?" Pato called. "About?" "The expedition. It's back and headed to Idemia. My father saw them going by this morning." "Well," Young said, getting to his feet, "that is something, isn't it? News should be coming soon, then, I suspect." "And now I finally figured it out," Pato announced. Young frowned. "Figured out what, son?" "The peach pits, the ones you gave me last harvest. You told my mother I'd know what to do with them, and for the past 5 moons I've been trying to understand what you meant." Young looked truly lost. "What I meant?" He leaned on a short shovel. Pato was all energy. "You meant that they are my future, didn't you? Not kickball, but maybe growing trees. Apparently Tabit Densel really liked trees, so maybe somewhere it's in my blood. But I was thinking an orchard? I don't know, that seems kind of dull. And I know that's an immature attitude, but then it hit me today. The ruins! They're going to need orchards there, aren't they? And that's what you meant by the pits, right? To take them on an adventure to the ruins and plant an orchard and find my future there." Pato beamed at the rector, who still wore a puzzled expression. After an awkward and silent moment, Young said, "Oh, the peach pits. The ones I dropped off at your house when the pipers were replacing that burst pipe, right?" Pato's enthusiasm dimmed. "Well, yeah. You told my mother Pato will know what to do with them." Young smiled apologetically. "I said that because it was clear your mother had no idea how to plant peach pits. Pato, sometimes a peach pit is just a peach pit, a means to getting more peaches, which you seem to love. I thought you'd plant them around your house." "That's it?" Young bobbled his head back and forth. "Well, yes." Pato's shoulders sagged. "So you don't think I should go to the ruins or anything to plant them?" The old man shrugged. "Well, I don't see any harm if you want to, but it's certainly none of my business." "I don't believe this!" Pato threw his arms in the air and clomped around the garden. For moons, I've been trying to understand the meaning of the peach pits, and here you tell me they're only for growing more peaches. For crying out loud, he exclaimed as he started for the road. The pits are only for getting more peaches. Unless... And once again, Young's quiet, calm voice cut through Pato's complaining and pierced his heart. Unless the Creator wanted you to get something more out of them. Pato spun around to face the rector, who was already busily hoeing around his basil. What's that supposed to mean? Young shrugged again. I suppose that would be between you and the Creator. He glanced up at Pato, nodded once, and went into his home, leaving Pato gaped-mouthed and even more confused. Mari always thought of herself as a patient woman, but during the next few days she began to wonder if all people who thought themselves patient were really just fooling themselves as she was. The fact that there was no school to occupy her mind didn't help much. The week did allow her, however, to work in the Brighter's farm with a clear view of the message towers and the fort. If anything interesting was going to happen, she had a front row seat. Then again, that front row seat was making her a little bit crazy. Every time she heard hoofbeats, she'd look up from whatever patch of dirt she was watering, or run from the hen house to see who was going to the fort. And considering how often horses came and went, she was spending more time spying on nobody interesting than she was helping the Brighters. Twice that week, she noticed Lannard exercising Thorne's horse, with his unkempt hair flowing behind him like a ragged flag. She had to smile at him. Lannard had done quite well this year, and likely would be moved out of her special class next season. His scores on the mid-year Department of Instruction exam, and Mari thought it was funny that the first letters of those words spelled out, "my die," since many of the boys complained how taking it killed them, were nearly the highest in the school. She'd noticed that he'd been taking thorough notes, and Offred told her once that he overheard Thorne asking Lannard for details about what they discussed in class. Last week, after she received the form from Ida Mia with the boys' scores, Mari unexpectedly met Thorne at the tower. Even though the scowling demeanor of the captain always made her uncomfortable, she made a point of mentioning to him that she was grateful for his interest in Lannard. When she told him how his concern had made Lannard a more attentive student over the past year, Thorne's features had contorted into such an odd smile that Mari thought his entire face would rearrange itself. All he said in response was, "I was most fortunate to find him." His response solidified Mari's evaluation of Lemuel Thorne. Most definitely peculiar. Over the past couple of seasons, she had frequently noticed the captain and got the impression that he was watching her. She would have chalked it up to paranoid imagination, except that she usually never imagined those kinds of things. And usually Mari didn't think of Thorne, especially on days like today, when her mind wandered all over the place. And a little too late, she remembered to turn off the spigot that now flooded her buckets with frigid water. "I'm supposed to be watering seedlings?" She spied Pato carrying another bale of hay to the barn, and smiled that sometime in the past 2 seasons he'd found his muscles. He'd never be as brawny as Perrin had become baling hay, but the boy's build was finally looking like a man's. He nodded over to Mari before he entered the barn. So often Mari felt as if she knew only half of her son. She was grateful he wasn't as distant or as unruly as her students, but Pato didn't share much with the family beyond his humor and teasing. Perrin said that was a man thing, especially a son thing. Trust me, Mari, I rarely told my mother anything at that age, and I turned out all right. Only because your father sent you to the Denzels when you were 18. That's why we have Shem. and Rector Young. They can straighten him out for us if he gets too obnoxious." Whenever Mari looked in Pato's eyes, there seemed to be a great deal going on in them, yet none of it was coming out. He spoke to her, but only in teasing, and he gave her quick hugs when he was sure no one was looking. Still, Mari worried that she was running out of time. Some universities would begin in less than half a year, and her son would be gone. So desperate was she with wanting to hear something from Pato about his future that she'd even told him she would help try to convince Perrin to let him go to Idemia if he wanted. But he had shaken his head, kissed her on the cheek, and said, "I just need to wait." She wished she knew what he meant, and hoped that someone was nudging him in the correct directions, as her father had frequently nudged her. In so many ways, Pato was like his grandfather Cephas. He was larger in build, thanks to Perrin, yet his eyes and hair reminded Mari of a man she hadn't seen since she was 15. But the rest of Pato was pure Perrin. From his winks, to his laugh, to his features, to his voice, to his forehead rubbing when he was frustrated. If her son was physically the combination of her two favorite men, maybe the rest of him was as well. She just needed to, as he reminded her, wait. Mari really hated waiting. It had now been 4 days since the expedition returned to Idemia. Mari grumbled to herself as she emptied the last bucket on what she hoped was a row Jatesy had already planted. Some news of any kind should have reached them by now. She trudged over to the canal and turned the handle to flood another section of farm. She was quite certain young Mrs. Brighter had told her to water that area, when she heard yet another horse racing up the cobblestones. She almost didn't bother to look up because it was early enough in the morning that the shifts were changing, and horses were traveling. The rider on this one, however, was wearing red. An administrative messenger in a hurry. With her fists clenched by her face in excitement, she glanced at the tower by her house and saw a blue banner. Usually the banners came down once the messenger reached the fort, but this one stayed up. Mari began to bounce, partly to keep warm in the cool air, partly to see if anyone else would be coming. The thundering noise alone told Mari that what was rambling up the road was big, important, and from Idemia. She was not disappointed. Only a few moments later, 2 large black coaches sped up the road and into the compound of the fort. "Yes!" Mari cried, and threw her fists into the air. "Finally!" A couple of soldiers walking along the road looked over and offered her uncomfortable smiles. Mari bit her lip and said, "Yes, it's finally a beautiful day, isn't it, boys?" They nodded obligingly and gave her the casual salute that the soldiers frequently sent the wife of their commander. Mari giggled, picked up her skirt, and went running to the barn. The 6th day of planting season, 338, would be unforgettable. As she made her way to the barn, she even composed her first song, a rather tuneless ditty that she sang under her breath, and went something like, "Terrip, terrip, terrip, we're coming, 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 tee-hee, tee-hee, tee-hee." She burst through the barn doors, sending a handful of chickens squawking and flapping, and startling her children and son-in-law, who were busy with morning chores. A messenger and 2 coaches just went up the road. Her 3 children stopped and looked at each other. "Yes?" Dec asked Mari, leaning on his pitchfork. "You silly boy, don't you know what that means?" "Another proclamation, law, or tax," Pato suggested, matching Dec's pose on his own pitchfork. "No!" "Oh, I know," Jatesy said with a twinkle in her eye as she covered a crate full of butter with a cloth. "It means that Father has been promoted, and you're all moving to Idemia tomorrow." "Now stop it!" Mari stomped her foot. "Ooh, you got a foot stomp, Jates. Good job," Pato nodded. "You just have to know how far to push her, Pato," Jatesy told him instructively. "Next, I'm going for an arm folding." "And you got it, Jates," Dec nudged her, "without even trying." Deckett, Mari said impatiently. Don't let them drag you into this. I still like you, but that can change. Pato shook his head. I'm feeling left out. Deck got a threat. I've got nothing right now. I must be losing my touch. Mother, can I go out stealing chickens tonight? I'll bring them right over here, I promise. Will the three of you be serious for once? Mari nearly shouted. Ah, well done, Pato, Jatesy said. You got her yelling, and at all three of us. No, little brother, you have not lost your touch. Pato stood straighter to remind Jatesy that he was now a full 2 inches taller than her. Mari finally shook her head, trying not to smile. Deck pointed at her. I see it, around the edges. Just can't stay mad at us, can you? Do none of you care about the expedition's findings? Apparently not as much as you, Mother, Jatesy laughed. I'm interested, but not maniacal. I am not maniacal, Mari insisted. And I'm not emotional, Jatesy countered. And I've never stolen a cow, Pato added. Everyone looked at him. He put on a ponderous face. Wait, did I miss what we're doing? Let me think. Mari threw her hands up in the air. Enough of you! I'm going to see your father. He'll care. No, you're not, a voice said behind her in the doorway. Mari spun around to face Shem. Not that he doesn't care, but there is a great deal of information pouring into the fort right now. Perrin sent me down to tell you not to come up. Then, noticing that Mari was eyeing the gap in the doorway, Shem closed it behind him. When he saw the coaches arriving, he wanted to make sure you stayed put. Mari gripped Shem's arms. What's going on up there? Calm down, calm down. For a non-maniacal woman, you're a little crazy right now. I know what's still hiding in the bottom drawer of your dresser, he whispered loudly in her ear, with a wink to her children. Don't make me pull out that bottle of sedation and use it on you. Mari held up her hands in surrender, took a few deep breaths, and produced the dinner smile. Shem, she said in her best sing-song voice, what is going on up there? I honestly don't know. It's highly top secret, for the commander's eyes only. The administrator's messenger even booted out Captain Thorne, Shem said with no small satisfaction. But I do know that there will be a presentation tonight, mandatory for the entire village about the findings. Soldiers are putting up the notices right now. All entertainments for the evening are canceled. That is serious, Deck nodded. May cause a riot, Pato agreed. Shem, what did he look like when he sent you here? Mari asked. Who, Perrin? Of course, Perrin, she shouted. She held up her hands and tried to compose herself again. I mean, what kind of look did he give you? Any clues? Shem shook his head. No clues, no look. Oh, come now. There's always a look. Not today. How can that be? Because he had nothing to give me yet. Are you sure? Yes. Shem was growing exasperated. He gave me the I don't have anything to give you look. So he did give you a look. Shem grumbled. Pato, go get the sedation. And that's the end of that chapter. Thank you.